Welcome to part 2 of episode 23 of Riches and Rags with our guest Taliy of the Creative Society. Woo! Couple of quick announcements. My band Toss will be playing its first show, opening up for Blatzenia Tractor Brewing Company March 3rd. Feel free to come on by. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you can't check us out live, you can always check out the podcast live streams, and more frequently, these band rehearsals at twitch.tv/delaostudios. Our content is always free, as is hitting that like and subscribe button. It means the absolute world to me. Without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
See if I can change these settings.
You look fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sir. You too.
Thanks, man. I cut my hair myself. I swear to God, I got. It's not looking great, but I took the. Yep.
Wow. That is something I probably could have.
I don't see a lot of people.
Oh, I'm back live again.
We're live.
Yeah, we're live again.
I've never cut my own hair in my life. I was just like, I can give it a shot. My nape was bugging me.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, all right. Have we hit that record button again for the second session?
Yes, we're live again.
Cool. We are on Discord now. We're on a slightly different call. A little bit of technical issues on the last one. We wanted to get the audio and video a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. And we're joined again with Mr. Jason Bell. Correct?
Yeah.
That's your name, right?
Is my mic
That's
on?
my
Can you
name,
hear
my
me?
No,
friend.
his mic
Thanks
is
for
not
My
on.
mic is off. I don't hear myself.
Uh,
Mr. Technical Support, Mr. Producer.
I hear you now.
Okay, this
Yeah.
is nice. Now I can hear myself as well.
Read you, Lima Charlie. Loud and clear, my friend.
All right. Hey, so Jason, let's have a little bit more of your background and who you are to Taliy in this creative society.
Okay, I'm Jason. I'm friends, colleagues, co-partner with not only Taliy but millions of participants of the Creative Society project. That's now in 180 different countries in the last 3 years. It's been a wild ride, a crazy journey. But mostly, what I do with Taliy is I investigate many different things. At the previous conference, we worked together to investigate the causes of war, who profits from it and who does not, and discuss how the Creative Society is the solution and the way out. Yeah, that's my background with Taliy. As for me personally, I'm a war veteran. I've always wanted to live in a world where people treated each other with respect, kindness, regardless of opinion, outlook on life, or culture, whatever, And of course, war afforded me the opportunity to reflect upon those things and remember what I wanted as a child. And here I am with the Creative Society project, and I never look back.
Yeah, and one of the also interesting topics that we have been investigating, and I would say we have different points of research and fields of research. And from my side, I do these investigations kind of like a journalist way, where I just research all possible information and I share it with other volunteers. We have different teams doing research in multiple fields. And then we cross-check each other to make sure that we actually present the most accurate fact on different things. So
yeah, it's good to understand that we seek out over 30 different sources from primary and secondary and perform literary analysis. And then we have other people who look for it, look through it and comb through it, right, with a fine-tooth comb. So please.
Yeah. So one of the things we started with the research in the field of climate, and we interviewed, I think over past 2 years, I've done more interviews with climate scientists than I could ever imagine. And we're talking about different, multiple fields of research. We're talking seismologists, volcanologists, we're talking about geologists, we are talking about various fields of research.
Astrophysicists, astronomers.
Astrophysicists.
I mean, you name it. Yeah.
How many conversations can you quantify?
Oceanographers.
Are we talking like maybe a dozen, 2 dozen?
maybe.
For Taliy personally, I can't talk about Taliy personally, but for me, at least 15 thus far. That I've been involved with, listening to their interviews or interviewing them personally, email correspondence, reading their literature, and Taliy probably.
I've done
even
much
so
more.
up to this
I've done
point.
much more. I think like dozens.
Wow.
I would say 50, but that would be a very unexact number because I couldn't.
So there's a lot that it's definitely a good spectrum of scientists.
Yeah,
And do you find a consensus or general thematic congruencies?
What we find, that's a very, I understand why Jason is laughing. We find that the scientists, they very often don't even know the information inside their own field of research, little bit outside of their reach. Like they're so specifically, like for example, volcanologists, they would study 1 or 2 volcanoes in their whole career.
Well, let's dial that back though. Let's dial that back because there needs to be context. In the United States, specifically in Western education, we specialize, right? And so what Taliy is about to speak on is that they don't study outside of their fields unless they're involved in an interdisciplinary project that requires them to bring in those pieces. But there's no one paying for that. So please, Taliy.
And what we noticed asking questions to somebody who's studying geology or doing research, or for example, studying volcanoes. Traditional volcanoes, we call them conical volcanoes or stratovolcanoes. They would know nothing about submarine volcanoes, for example, that are on the bottom of the ocean. The same way they wouldn't know much about supervolcanoes. And when they speaking on certain subject, and even they show in facts, they present in facts that are, to us make sense because we just interviewed somebody else who's studying the Earth core or inner processes inside of our planet. We understand that when they say that they, for example, they have been testing magma during the recent eruption, and they say, oh, the consistency is different, the particles are different, but they don't know why. But we already know that right now, because of the heating up of our planet from the very core in recent years, a very extremely hot flows of magma started happening from the very core of our planet, which goes towards the outside, which increases temperature inside of our planet, which even this magma is so hot and it's going from such deep layers of our planet that when it comes to the upper levels, it has a different structure compared to the one that we used to. It could be not the big thing for somebody who's just studying volcanoes, but if you study the whole thing, and for example, I'll give you an example. We had this one lady who was a geologist, and specifically they were doing research in submarine volcano activity, and then we were doing interviews with oceanographers. And what are oceanographers sharing with us? They say recent decades we've noticed something strange happening with the ocean because we have these buoys all over the ocean.
Balloonists?
No, buoys.
Oh, buoys.
The buoys.
Yeah,
Okay.
the buoys.
Yeah, the seismographer analyzing machines.
They also analyze temperature, and they get an information in
Okay.
real time from temperature from different parts of the ocean in real time. And what they started noticing a few decades ago, and actually not so long, more and more often, that they started seeing this heating up of the ocean in certain regions for 10 degrees Celsius and more. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean, pops up a huge amount of water, which is 10 degrees hotter than water anywhere around. And they call them blobs. We can look this up if you want.
Yeah. What would you call it? Oceanography temperature blobs?
They just call it blobs.
I think,
Yeah.
I think they
Blobs.
just call them ocean blobs. Yeah.
Ocean blobs. And they couldn't
never heard of these.
explain it. And if we take our traditional model of CO2 is the root cause of all evil, we would say that is it CO2 that concentrated in one point on our planet and warmed up this specific amount of water? That would be impossible,
But
right?
the blob, does it move up and go away, or does it just kind of hang out in a flow state that's just
So
kind of
The most
always-
famous one, it appeared close to Alaska, and then it spread all the way to California. And then when I actually went to the Santa Monica Pier and was talking to my to people who were fishing there, fishermen, and I asked them the question: Did you actually notice that the water is different or something changed?
It's called the blob.
The blob.
The blob is a large mass of relatively warm water in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of North America. Detected in late 2013, spread through 2014. Do you think this had anything to do with the Fukushima reactor?
No, this
No,
that's very interesting. This is where we get into the point why it's so important to make multidisciplinary research.
Oh,
This blob?
yeah.
This blob was so huge. They appear in different parts of the ocean. The one that
Okay.
came from Alaska to California was so powerful. The fisherman at the Santa Monica Pier told me the fish he's been fishing is different from the one that was here 10 years ago because of the temperature change. It migrated like
snap.
that much. And then we at our forum again, our scientists, because we have volunteers who do research like we do, but there are scientists who actually present these things. And this lady goes, she goes, I was discussing this with my colleague who's studying submarine volcanoes, and we just, it appears that he accidentally had a map of ocean floor and all submarine volcanoes, and I was like, accidentally. This is kind of things that doesn't happen accidentally. you have to have knowledge and research these kind of things. So they say, we just decided to put the map of the blobs on the top of the map of underwater volcanoes. And what they noticed that in 90% of cases, they were exactly on top of the submarine volcanoes or zones with a high geothermal activity.
So what is the importance of the geothermal activity in the
It's
oceans?
huge. It's huge.
It's
because
yeah, go ahead.
Because of the CO2 theory that we're fed, right? Like the ocean is responsible for the output of CO2 because it's warming up. Simultaneously, if the ocean is warming up from the bottom up, it indicates problems with our core,
Okay.
right? And
I understand.
so there's no funding that's
then-
given.
Yeah, we're told that that the CO2 warming is from different causes, right?
Of course.
So the official theory is that CO2 is warming up the atmosphere, and then ocean is getting that heat from the atmosphere, and that's why we get in all these processes with melting
is
glaciers
But
and so on.
heat rises. That doesn't make any sense.
Now-
On a monkey level, to me, that I don't know.
okay. And you are correct, absolutely correct. So what's actually happening that the heat that ocean traps from the
Sure.
atmosphere can only penetrate upper 200 meters, which is not that much,
That's right.
That would make sense to me.
And then if you add to it the circulation of water in the ocean, it's upper 700 meters.
Kind of like how when water freezes on the top, like the temperature can only freeze the water so much, and then it's just regular liquid. It's
That's
the
right.
same thing with
Yeah,
hot
very-
water, right? It's like it can only reach so much of the top before it just becomes regular water again. Is that what I'm getting at?
Very good
So
analogy.
just
Right.
opposite of ice.
Yeah.
Right.
But then what we also noticed, we did this interviews with people who went to Greenland, Siberia, and West Antarctica. And we actually, that's separate teams of researchers. But what they found was very interesting, that in Greenland, they have these areas, like, it's covered with ice and everything. And they found underground lakes, under ice lakes, I mean. So imagine this, huge amounts of ice, but underneath there is a lake of liquid water. How is that possible?
You mean like under the water? There's another
Under
lake?
the snow, under the glacier, there is a lake of liquid water. And that is because underneath there is a hot spot where magma is heating up the tectonic plate, and the stuff starts melting, but it's melting from the bottom up. And that is very interesting because the very same thing is happening in Antarctica. Many people heard that glaciers of Antarctica are melting. We have to do something about it. Leonardo DiCaprio is bombarding his Instagram feed with the stories. But what they do not mention, and that's something that
Is that it's melting from the bottom up.
it's
No one
melt.
talks about it.
So it's melting only on the western side of Antarctica. Western side is the Pacific side, and eastern side is the Atlantic Ocean side. And if we pop up the map of Antarctica without ice, if we could ask our technical team to do that, we're gonna see very interesting fact that on Western Antarctica is one of the most active volcanic regions in the world. There are more than 140 volcanoes already discovered.
What particular
The
map of
western
Antarctica?
region.
We would like to have it without ice, with no ice. So
The western.
map of Antarctica without ice.
Without ice.
Yeah, with no ice cap. And then we will see that not only... Oh, okay, one of those could work, yeah. Oh, and volcanoes. If you could add volcanoes to the search, we would see.
So what do they use, like
exactly-
LiDAR technology and radar to get down in
Yeah,
that and
either
stuff?
volcanoes or tectonic plates. That would work. And what we will see there is we're gonna see that on western side, so on the Pacific side, there are 140 underwater volcanoes. And the number 3 is perfect. And actually number 1 is great as well. So
Zoom in on that, yeah.
yeah,
Heck
zoom
yeah.
in on any of them. So you can see that glaciers, you see the melting glaciers in the Weddell Sea and Maribyrd Land. Those are the melting regions.
Okay.
And it's not melting on the other side. It's melting on the side where you have 140 volcanoes. You see they marked with red dots. So those volcanoes becoming much and much more active. And this is something that is not getting enough attention in the media. And the reason why is because it completely destroys the whole narrative about CO2 being the root cause of all evil, and that we have to pay our taxes and dedicate huge amounts of money to fighting CO2. Because when you know this, you understand that CO2 has nothing to do with the global warming. The heating up of the planet is happening from the inside, and it's not only the Antarctica. It's happening around the world. The
Okay.
very same thing in Siberia, the very same thing in Greenland, and we presented research. The thing is, this research is being done by the scientists, but they have no platform to voice it, to attract attention to this fact.
Have either of you heard of the Schumann resonance? Oh, my keyboard doesn't work.
Schumann resonance is a very interesting thing,
Of
but
course.
also don't get it. It's very overrated. People talk about it so much.
I'm wondering if this has anything to do with like a pole shift, with electromagnetism.
That's a very good
and
question, because
Conductivity of water. Is there any properties water has with electromagnetism?
those are very good questions, and I'm happy you asked them. If we could pull up the map of pole shifts since mid-90s up until now, we are going to notice that North Pole shifted by a lot from Canada towards Siberia.
Pole shift?
Yeah, the North Pole, the North Magnetic Pole shift from mid-90s to now. Yeah, you can see the number 3 would be a good representation. It's and actually this one, Earth magnetic field acting up. You can see at which pace it's moving. You see it's already surpassed the North geographic pole. So imagine this, 20 years ago it was in the middle of North Canada, and now it's already on the way to Siberia. And the question is, why is that happening? What's generating the magnetic field and the poles as well, right? It's the core of our planet. That's a very well-known fact.
Yeah, it's a complicated interconnected process.
What is not being discussed anymore, because many people heard the North Pole is shifting at very high pace. But what about the South Pole? Would you think it's shifting as well at the very same pace? Because
I would have no idea. Yeah.
that would make sense, but it is not happening. And this is very puzzling. And I'm going to ask our technical team to pull up one more thing. It's called South Atlantic Anomaly. South Atlantic Anomaly is something very important and something that... Oh yeah, this is a huge dent in the magnetic field of our planet, and it's located right on the above the South America, above Buenos Aires and so on. And this map, it shows, so it was first discovered in the late 2000s, and then it was only located over the South America. And within years, the funniest part, scientists, right in 5 years, about 2015, they say, okay, we studied this thing. We know everything about it. It's been there for years, for thousands of years, for millions. It evolved. We know it. It's cool. Everybody chill out. Nothing to worry about. And why they noticed it in the very first place? Because they started losing satellites flying above this area. So Japanese satellite fell apart, optics was destroyed, the whole technology. Then Russian satellite fell down, and now they have to even switch off the electronics on the International Space Station when they flying above this thing. This is because all our space stuff, whatever, it flies only within the limits of our magnetic field where we have protection from solar radiation. This part has very small amount of that protection. Basically, the height of the magnetic field is super low here. So satellites are being exposed to huge amounts of solar radiation. And what happened next when they announced that they figured it out, it's all cool, this thing expanded towards South Africa and generated another zone of super low magnetic field above Cape Town. And now it's almost in 5 years, by now 7 years, it expanded, almost doubled in size, and generated another epicenter right above South Africa.
No, so like where I see that second nipple starting, it has already reached the bottom of South Africa, is what you're saying.
This is a map from 2020, so by now it's even bigger.
Wow.
But the thing is, this video is hidden on YouTube. It's only available by the link from European Space Agency if you go on their website. I believe NASA is a little bit more open and they have some videos, but you have to really research these topics to know what's happening. And so what's happening to the South Pole? If we play this video, we can actually see how it evolved only within, 2016. And then boom, 2020, and then there was another. South Pole, it started shifting, and then it came to the southern border of this area, and it stopped there. So we are in a situation when South Pole stuck at this point, and north keeps shifting towards Russia.
So what else is there going on around this? Is this like a Bermuda Triangle kind of thing? Are there like compass navigation problems, radio communication problems, or are just electronics just shutting down?
This thing, for now it's just electronics shutting down, but it's what it's signaling is that the thing that generates our magnetic field is having something weird going on in it. So in the core of our planet, some processes happening right now which are weakening our magnetic field by a lot, and at the same time destabilizing it. And we know that it's been registered by the scientists who study the core, that there was a huge jump of the core registered in 1996, then 1998. And at the very same time, scientists registered some very anomalous flow of radioactive, they call it cosmic rays, which also penetrate our planet. But somehow it makes sense that that additional energy from the outside affects the cores of the planets of the solar system. Because what has started happening recently is not just huge amount of magma coming from the core, because our core not only shifted towards Siberia, and then the whole magnetic field started reacting to that, but also it's warming up the area around it, this additional energy, and it pushing magma flows to the outside of our planet. That's why ocean floor started being much more active in geothermal way. The submarine volcanoes started erupting.
So we don't know what
causing
caused it?
blobs.
We
Causing blobs.
We don't know what caused the blob?
We know what's causing blob. It's additional flow of this super hot magma, which is coming from the very core of our planet. The thing is that this theory completely destroys the CO2 narrative, because whole stuff becomes irrelevant. The whole stock market, Jason, they have a whole stock market where they sell the amount of CO2 quotas that each country can produce. So, for example, Germany has certain amount of CO2 quotas, and then they run out of it. They have to buy additional ones. But there is a stock market on which, for example, if in Russia or China or any other country, they did not produce enough goods, so they have saved some of their CO2 quotas, they can trade it over there. So there are people, of course, manipulative, speculative stuff going on. They buy this stuff cheap and then resell it to Germany like triple the price, which increases the price of the products, which then goes from our pockets when we buy in a car or whatever, any sort of product. We have to buy
Hey, you
this.
see how difficult it is to talk about these things without getting involved with the whys and the hows of things. You know,
Yeah,
It's-
because I'm even getting a little bit lost. Yeah.
It's a systemic thing. The thing is, how do you explain something that has so many multiple angles as a simple thing?
We're not
it's
allowed to even say certain information about it.
Well,
Right.
that's why we're being very careful about
Yeah.
information we openly present at our forums. Like, we believe it is safe to say about the things that were publicly shown already. The stuff that is has been even published in mainstream media, but did not get enough attention. Like the question of the climate gate, when multiple emails of the climatologists from University of East Anglia leaked into the internet, and what they were showing that when they were preparing the most important document of the century, the one that was the scientific background to the Kyoto Protocol, they manipulated the data to make it look like the global warming is happening at a much more alarming pace, and that global warming is unprecedented. For that purpose, they evened out the graphs of temperatures for the past centuries, and they erased the periods when the temperatures were going up and down in previous centuries, to make us think that current warming is unprecedented and caused by CO2 emissions, because it totally lines up with technological era and industrialization. And then in 2009, the ClimateGate story pops up. These emails, like even before that, many people were very skeptical about these things, but they were shut down, and only those were financed, those researchers were financed and getting good publicity, which were standing for the CO2 theory. And we know certain politicians were pushing this story even before 1997 when Kyoto Protocol was signed, and then about 2001 it was ratified all over the globe under this one proof of the hockey stick graph, which they call it hockey stick because it's kind of flat, and then it goes up sharply, showing that temperatures went up in the 20th centuries like never before.
How do we spell it? Kyoto Protocol?
Kyoto Protocol is something that was signed in
KY.
Kyoto. Kyoto. Kyoto Protocol. And that was the very beginning of this era of CO2, fighting against CO2. So Kyoto Protocol, and if we, you can see Al Gore standing in the middle. It was the biggest achievement of his, him being a VP. And what's interesting, if you Google the hockey stick graph, basically, a COP, they call it COP conferences, when they meeting up, gathering at certain places around the world.
The COP conference.
COP conference, In 2000, in last year, they gathered in Scotland, I believe. This year it was in Egypt. They choose the hotter climate because they got bombarded by questions when they had to use diesel generators in Scotland to warm up the place in which they were gathering to talk about global warming.
Funny how that works, right?
And they also were,
absurdity, you know?
That's the way things go. You know?
also it's very interesting because they had the food served. It was seafood from Indian Ocean, so from overseas. And beef from Argentina, so they did not limit themselves to anything.
The rules don't apply to the people making the rules.
The even funnier thing happened this year when they gathered in Egypt, and of course there were no problems with temperatures in Egypt, but what they noticed is that there were about 800 private jets. Besides
private
regular,
jets.
about 800. And then when that information popped up about 800 from employees of the Egyptian airport, multiple articles started popping up all over internet saying that there is a story about 400 jets flying to Egypt, but it's not a big deal, they have to get there somehow. And I was like, why don't you use regular flights?
There's
like,
a
guys,
word. There's this word I'm looking for.
greenwashing.
Hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Yeah, hypocrites. It's out of control, man.
Of course, people see that through. People see that people are trying to push narratives which they don't even want to follow. It's very interesting when John Kerry had to fly, and he's the climate czar of our country. He had to fly to Iceland to receive another prize for being active support person in the field of green energy or whatever. And one journalist dared to ask him this question, why do you fly private when what's your carbon footprint? How much CO2 you emit? And he said, well, with my lifestyle, that is the only way to
I think that's crazy with his lifestyle. Saying I'm more important than you. My time is more important than your time, so I get to save it.
Yeah, but what's very interesting that in 2009, when these emails were leaked out, what public found out, it was a huge story. If you Google ClimateGate, you will see how many researchers were researchers. So just to put it in numbers, at that time, Tiger Woods got into a car accident and had some kind of drama with his personal life. And that thing was getting about 100,000 requests on Google.
When there's something happening over here, there's always something happening over there.
The thing is, his story was getting about 100K requests on Google, and the ClimateGate was surpassing that.
Oh, really? Was it?
To 150.
Huh.
So ClimateGate on internet was a huge story, but in mainstream media, nobody
I never heard about it.
brought this up. The Climate Research Unit email controversy, they officially call it, or also known as ClimateGate.
I'm wondering if this episode of my podcast is going to get shadow banned on YouTube or taken down.
Well, this is open information.
This is open
information. This is on
right?
Wikipedia.
Okay.
Anyone can come check it. We're not trying to make it
that's fine. I understand.
bigger than what it is. We're just trying to attract people's attention to the fact that this information is out there. Just at some point, people had too many questions regarding this subject, like why scientists had to collaborate on this thing to hide the fact that climate change doesn't have that much background, like scientific background to the theory that CO2 is root cause of all evil. And what was exposed...
It's important to note here, though, that they've created a term around that. When you look up climate denials, right? It's... anyone who doesn't believe in the anthropogenic CO2 causes of climate change is a climate denier. And when you meet people of a different mindset, or you talk to them and you try and engage in analytical thinking, objective reasoning regarding the topic, you realize that people aren't disagreeing that climate change is real. There is a fringe fraction, right? But for the most part, the common sense man, woman, whatever, it is that we don't think it's CO2, and so they have to create a power word around it. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so for example, I don't deny that climate is changing. It is changing. I'm just saying that from what I learned participating in the project, it's changing for the some reasons that are happening within our planet, the anomalous processes in the core of our planet, and we have data that backs up this story. It's a lot of scientists talking about it, but this story is not covered in the media. And we come into the point where it's almost illegal to say this kind of things, and that is the question arises, why? Because if you truly take a scientific approach to anything, you have to debate different points of views and come up with the most reasonable, with the most backed up stories, and you cannot silence the opposite party because you might miss some very important piece of the puzzle, or you can even improve prove your theory by debating and actually finding the truth. But with this topic, maybe around 2014, it became some kind of a political thing that is like part of the religious belief that cannot be debated. It's something that is holy and untouchable.
There does seem to be this holy religious aspect of science and acceptance of what happens, and don't let's question it.
It's a very good.
Somehow the narrative was pushed. You couldn't question science, but everyone who's ever taken elementary science classes know that science is never settled. It is not a thing that can be settled.
But
it always improves. You always develop a hypothesis, and
it is
you
a
know
question.
what I mean?
Yeah, its fundamental basis. It is questions. Is all it is. That's what science is, right? And trying to get answers from those questions. So
It's what it's supposed to be.
So that's very interesting that you compared it to the religious belief, because when in 2009 the ClimateGate story popped up, many scientists who already had questions for this mainstream narrative, they got the evidence and they started posting this in their vlogs and blogs and comparing the graphs and saying that, guys, we have to discuss it. At the very same time, we started seeing that these scientists who were on the CO2 side, they started from emails, we know how they were dealing with their enemies. First of all, they found out a very sharp name to call them: climate deniers. And that is for a reason, because at that time there was a term called Holocaust denier, somebody who's denying the Holocaust. A terrible person. That, like, what can be more terrible than denying genocide? How would you smear your enemies to make it obvious to everyone that that's a bad person? They wanted to make this analogy, so they started to smear everyone as a climate denier, climate denialist. And at the very same time, they were making articles, like very negative articles about whoever was coming up. Like, for example, there were astronomers who presented their story on the climate change, and it's how it's related to the changes in the solar system for past 2,000 years. And they were smeared. We see in the emails that the CO2 people from IPCC, International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they were looking for the ways to smear them. They were saying, maybe we could refer to them as astrologists, and we can say, we just, accidentally call them like that. So they were coming from personal attacks.
Well, personal attacks are never good in arguments. And I'm trying to think, why would they do this? There's two possibilities. A, they really do believe their own forms of science are what's actually happening, and they're just trying to shut down what they think is competition. Or B, they know the real causes of the climate change, and they don't want other people to know that because that gives an upper hand. So I don't know.
So
it's always difficult questioning.
It's a multiple
reasoning behind things, but you can definitely address the point of what you said initially, and that is the creation of a pairing, right? And that is creating this image in which you're calling the person a bad name, but you're covering it up with scientific jargon, and that's what they did. So most people that's the basis of their argument. That's the basis of their dispute is, oh, you're just a climate denier. And in psychology, they called things like that thought terminating cliches, which is like, it shuts down your critical thinking, and you don't, you know what I mean? You don't go past your own defenses. You don't look at it.
It does seem like a
objectively.
subconscious ego thing, because these
That's right.
people have been building careers or maybe teaching mass amounts of students these ideas, if not making money on it, and to come
And
all
being
this
grant
way
eaters.
and being told no, that this is actually not the way things are. That's a huge pill to swallow. Like, I've been putting falsehood into reality for no benefit other than my own.
And the other part of that is our society in general, right? Like, you have this entire fallacious reasoning in academia, right? So like many of these chairs and things like that, like, they have a livelihood to protect. They have a family, so if
Correct.
you look at it objectively, you can rationalize that and you can understand their perspective. But at the same time, to be a scientist in society is a very important role, because you're supposed to be contributing to the development of humanity, the development of society at large, in which case you yourself benefits. So it's a very weird gray thing that we now have to address, and try to change.
That's a very good argument because when we look into the story of this scientist, in 1999, when IPCC decided to, and the whole story of IPCC, they were created on the foundation of intergovernmental organization by United Nations that the only purpose of which was to study the greenhouse gases and to prove that CO2 is affecting climate change. So you would think they already be biased over there. For the first, and every like 3-4 years, they coming up with a different kind of summarizing summary for policymakers as to how to pass your policies to make the best impact on the climate. By the end of the 90s, when they've been done with this thing with ozone layer in the beginning of the 90s. That's when DuPont, who had the only alternative to the freon gas, made billions of dollars by selling their product, because freon gas was banned to save us from the ozone hole, which then was shrinking down, and then all of a sudden, by the end of the 2019, when all the scientists were celebrating, we saved you from the huge threat of ozone hole, you know what happened? The ozone hole all of a sudden became the record-breaking size, and it expanded to bigger than the size of Antarctica. And they have no explanation why. So it shows that these scientists have zero idea about what's causing it.
Was that ozone hole the same thing as the Antarctic anomaly?
No, it's a different.
Are they related in any way?
What year was that too, by the way? The ozone increase.
Like 2020, 2021, that's when they had the record breaking.
That's weird, right?
Exactly,
like what was
exactly.
going on in the world at that time where people weren't moving and they weren't really using technology.
Nothing was causing it. But you know what's even funnier? That last summer, this one big story comes out on the news when Canadian scientist Quinn Bin Liu from University of Waterloo, he found out that cosmic rays destroying ozone layer in equatorial areas. This got so much backlash because this was a big scientific fact all over the news, whatever. Right away, multiple scientists started gathering and saying that no, there must be some kind of mistake. It cannot be happening, just to shut this story down, because it was attracting attention to the fact that, first of all, ozone layers appear not only above Antarctica, the one that got the most fame, but also to the fact that cosmic rays of unknown nature penetrating our planet, affecting ozone layer, our atmosphere, and people might actually start searching on them and find out that they interfere with the core.
When did it become so evil to just say, I don't know, let's find out together?
It's even a mockery. They say, oh, you did your own research. Are you a scientist? Whatever. Like, just logically researching anything is not allowed anymore.
To answer your question, I think since the beginning of our human story, as long as we can remember, there's always been a point where it's been evil to find out together.
I don't know, guys. Let's find out together, please. It's like
yeah.
It's actually, well, when you don't have a politically motivated science, you can actually come up with some certain interesting researchers. For example, like there was a Japanese research that cigarettes, even passively smoking, inhaling somebody else smoking cigarettes next to you, can cause cancer. And then what American tobacco companies did, they financed their own research, which proved that this is not the cause of cancer, and that has nothing to do with cancer. And only then we found out, years after, that main backup story that passive smoking is not causing cancer in your lungs, we found out that it was actually financed by those companies. But remember,
biases are interesting things.
That's like, how do you make science to be actually not motivated by financial interest of those who funded these scientific researches? Because when you have this huge green energy industry, they are interested in selling their products. And in many countries, it's all over the world, it's way more expensive than traditional energy. But they somehow push this narrative that we have to pay extra. And that is one of the reasons why the gas is so expensive right now. Because last summer, they said we have to replace gas stoves with electric ones in
How are they going
California.
to do? Yeah, that's
People said we're not
preposterous.
gonna it's not gonna happen because gas is so much cheaper. Well, guess what? By the end of the year, the gas is not cheaper; it's much more expensive. And then next year, when they offer you to change for electric, you're gonna be like, "Oh wow,
It's
I'm
so
gonna
timely though, man.
Yeah.
Like it really is. If you
Like
look at it
clockwork,
and you
yeah.
you know why?
know,
You know why they?
if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, right? It's a duck. So,
You know,
it is what
one
it
of the
is.
funniest jokes I heard about the change in electric stoves, replacing the gas stoves with them, when they ask him why would they do it, they say because you cannot remotely shut down the gas stove.
Oh, yeah, the same with the Teslas and the remote controlled access and yeah. This moment, this pause, this break in momentum, I use these to open our fortune cookies.
Nice.
We have what are called misfortune cookies. So I'm gonna let you hit the gong since you're here. We can open one for you too, Jason. But-
Okay, Mr.
Yeah,
Mr.
go.
Bell, you ready?
Yeah.
And
Snap. Now I'm gonna warn you. When you open the cookie, it's colored black. Don't eat it because it'll dye your teeth.
okay, those
I
have
got one of my-
charcoal. The one with
Yeah,
charcoal. Okay,
I think it's part of the branding of the misfortune cookie. It's like an anti-fortune cookie. It's pretty cool. We'll see what this one says.
Okay. That's
Antithesis.
it's black.
Yeah, it's shiny black.
Shiny.
What's
Okay,
it say?
let's see what it says. What it says.
You want me to read it?
You're from the shallow.
You're from the shallow end of the gene pool.
No,
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
that's a really bad one. I believe that.
it's pretty fun. It's pretty
You know
bad.
what's interesting? We started this conversation from Google, and I was watching an interview of this lady who founded Gene Research Company, in 23andMe. And the way she was presented it is very interesting. She said her goal was to actually show that people can study their genes, know what kind of, possible diseases they might catch in the future, and prevent those by having different lifestyle, maybe rejecting certain products, whatever. This was a threat to pharmaceutical company, which sees us as customers. And healthy person is a lost customer for pharmaceutical companies. So they started writing articles massively all over media that knowing what kind of diseases you might be predetermined to can affect your mental health in a bad way. And this was going out of nowhere with no scientific background, no research, nothing. So she was like, how do I fight it? Well, I had to, because it had to be approved by the whatever national agency they have.
Which
Which one was doing it with all the viruses and health?
CDC?
Yeah, CDC. She had to be approved by that. Yeah, so her way to prove that she's right was by backing up her side with facts, with researchers, and she presented that this information has no possible threats or damages to mental health. But there
Just
was
knowing your genetics doesn't have effects on your health negatively.
Yeah, you're not going to be depressed only because you know that.
Well, there is a real placebo and nocebo effect. If you tell people they're getting sicker, they can start to get sicker. And if you tell people that they're getting healthier and they believe it, their body will start to affect in such a way.
Even
This is
more
an
so
interesting
if it's
phenomenon.
reinforced by fallacious articles.
Yeah. And
I
the
understand
more
the
you're
point
outside
you're getting. You're
external,
absolutely right.
the more your external reality reinforces it, and the body does
Right.
seem to have this way of healing itself if it's convinced. Not entirely. You can do things to aid it, but it's a reverse placebo effect. It is interesting.
Well, you see, pharmaceutical companies, they're very smart people ruling them, and they look years ahead. And what they saw it as a threat because they started thinking if people going to be knowing their genes, they will find a way to fix it.
That makes sense to me.
And
That
then
lines
they
up.
be healthy.
Yeah.
So in 2017, MSNBC published this, and I think the study was by Goldman Sachs. It was a big one all over internet. They wanted to find out, does it make sense to finance pharmaceutical companies and gene research? And what they found out, the article was called Curing Diseases is not a sustainable business model.
It's a great article title, man.
It's
Let you know
amazing.
loud and clear what the values are.
It's amazing because how can you put it more bluntly that we pharmaceutical companies are not interested in having healthy
And I see
people.
this, and I see this too on a personal level. I don't know if either of you gentlemen have been exposed to the compound kratom. It's a leaf that comes from Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I know what it is, but I
Yeah.
haven't,
I've used it. I've used it for years, and it's probably one of the most mild but most effective things that I've used, and it helps anxiety. It helps enhance workouts because it has like slight anti-pain properties to it as well. And anything I tried to research on it, I'd see articles that looked like, they may not have been, they weren't lining up with what I was experiencing, but they were all shit talking the kratom. Anything I was looking up was like, don't take it, don't take it, don't take it. But all the forums I go to with people actually taking it are like, this is great, it's working for me, it's not hurting. It's kind of like how I'm saying,
It's interesting you bring that up because it's used actually by addicts here in Michigan.
Yeah, to recover from
yeah,
opiates.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And it's effective. I actually used it to help me in the process of quitting alcohol. I quit alcohol about 3 years ago in March, and it was something I took kind of in the in-between, and then I stopped. It was easy to stop taking kratom. I just stopped that, but I haven't had any alcohol in about 3 years. And it was kind of a crutch that I used because I found out that opiate addicts had used that as well. So, yeah, it's an effective treatment.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Nice job, man.
Yeah, it's so you have had no alcohol for how long?
Almost 3 years. March 8th will be 3 years.
What changes do you notice? Like, how different is it for you?
When there's a windy night outside in the dark and it's just like really windy, it's like the wind just kind of stops, and you get to kind of figure out what to do from there. So it's not.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of clarity, but not a ton, right?
It's very interesting because I stopped consuming alcohol when the pandemic started. We were living in Venice Beach and having these beach parties and playing volleyball and having this low alcohol drinks. And then at some point after one bad hangover, I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the benefit? Do I feel much more relaxed? Maybe for a little bit, but the damage is so much more overwhelming. I feel like a trash next day. I skip my workouts. My focus decreases. There is no benefit to it. Like, I just took it from logical point. There is no point in consuming this product that only does lower in my productiveness. And then when I stopped doing this, I just noticed how much more productive I am. Of course, I also seen that I'm consuming coffee much more because that became my drug of choice. But that's in a good way. That's not I don't see any downsides to that other than maybe acidity, like higher acidity of your body. So
that's good. There's a direct connection between your being productive and quitting alcohol. I think mine was a desire to be productive. Not so. It was like I really wanted to start doing stuff. I didn't necessarily like start doing it, but the desire to start doing extra things came to enrich in the life.
And then
it's crazy how much responsibility for yourself you feel after quitting alcohol. It's really interesting.
Well, like what kind of responsibility?
Like just your willingness to accept responsibility for events in your life afterwards, whereas before it's like that gray fog, as I would put it, is there, when you're drinking and stuff like that.
In a stoic kind of way?
Yeah, of course.
Of like
course.
accepting...
I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Oh,
so.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Nice.
It is interesting. There's a lot of clarity, but at the same time, I really like your analogy you used there about the windy day. I think that's more fitting.
Yeah. We like to talk in analogies and all kinds of stuff as humans.
Yeah.
We use stories to really convey messages the most effective way.
Like, when you're taking some kind of substances or whatever, anything that kind of gives you this dopamine and stuff. It makes you feel like everything is not that bad. But when you check the reality, the first thing, yeah, it's kind of sad. The second thing, it makes you want to progress, want to work on yourself and so on. And to, like, get somewhere nice. So what I noticed, like my productiveness and my desire to actually contribute to the society in a positive way became so much stronger after that, especially with so much free time, with working from home, and with all this free time we had during past 2 years. I was like, I have to do something meaningful for the society, and that's why I became so much more active in this project, which I knew about, but I wasn't taking such an active part in it, which is Creative Society. And the question is, I always asked myself, okay, we live in, growing up in Eastern Europe, I was like, okay, corruption, bad infrastructure, post-Soviet countries, not cool, whatever. But we've seen attractive picture on the TV. We saw America, take a look at this Miami Beach, Los Angeles, everything looks beautiful and shiny. And then I ended up moving to California, and it was kind of a shock to see how much of a dark side it has to it when you see exposed to the poverty, exposed to the huge amount of people with mental disease. And when I was asking locals, why do you have so many crazy people? Because I was asking, why do you have homeless people at all? It's not even a question in anywhere in Eastern Europe. They just don't have that. And people are like, well, those are mentally sick people. Locals find excuse for that. And I'm like, why do you have so many mentally sick people? And they're like, well, there was some kind of mental hospital shut down in the years before, and these people ended up in the streets. I was like, when was it? They were 1960s. I was, hold on a second. It's 60 years ago? Those people are not even alive. Most of the people I see are young people, and most of them...
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think there's a lot of reasons. Illegal drugs, legal drugs, stuff that's in the tap water, generational trauma and broken family units, and lowered morale and lack of purpose. When you give a man everything he needs, just in a sense of here's your bread, then he goes, well, what am I here for? He doesn't, even if he didn't have his bread before, maybe his whole purpose in life was to get the bread. And then now he has a reason to live. But you give people everything and more, and they sometimes lose a purpose and just go off the deep end. That's what I think.
That's an interesting point of view. There was also a very interesting study that was done in Europe, in different European states. Now it's a long time ago. So they introduced this universal basic income, which they wanted to see how people gonna behave. Will they stop working at all? And those people who lost their jobs, they were thinking, well, let's provide them with universal basic income and see how it's gonna play out for them. And they wanted to check, are they gonna stop working at all? Just gonna live off this money? It was enough to survive.
What happened?
They noticed that these people did not stop searching for jobs and did not stop working.
They need purpose in life.
But what they noticed is that these people became much more selective about the jobs they pick in. So they, instead of jumping on the very first opportunity to get any job simply to pay off your bills and survive, they started to looking for the jobs which they are actually interested in, which they gonna love performing, and which gonna be where they can actually apply the best skills and contribute to the society.
That's a good thing. That's not an entire perspective.
That's an incredible study, because it shows that it's completely different from that thing we've been presented on the news. And another topic, I was researching on how much it cost for us to actually have those people, who have nothing to lose and they commit crimes, robberies, and so on. It's very common in California. They end up in jail, and it costs, how do you think, how much we spend from our budget, meaning our taxpayers' money per each person?
It's 70 to 100 grand a inmate per year?
Yeah,
something
about
like that?
$87,000 per year. And I was like, oh, wow.
It's a lie.
It took me a lot to get to the point where I was making that amount of money living in California, and I had to work for that. And then I'm seeing that we spend this money on what? What's the point? Why don't we invest the very same amount of money into these people before they pushed to the edge where they have nothing to lose, so they commit crimes out of necessity. And necessity is a driving factor in there. You know, when we have people who have no perspectives in life, who have zero ability to realize their potential, that's when you see this thing happening. So the issue is, how do we change the system? Because also, like, it's not something that you can target specifically, like, oh, we're gonna put a band-aid on our healthcare here by, like, suggesting a better insurances, for example. It's not working because the whole system is falling apart. Like, can you imagine a treatment that would fix?
Yeah, I'm just imagining like robots and integrated AI going around, drones delivering medications to people, but that's not what's going on. Actually, in California, they just passed a law to allow police authorities to use lethal force with controlled robotics. They can kill people and use robotics to take out civilians.
I've seen this news in San
California.
Francisco.
Yeah, man. So it's going the opposite direction. I mean,
it's a bit dystopian.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the logistics are there to do the good things, but the consciousness that's running it is pushing the bad things.
Why do we keep choosing the opposite? You know,
is it us choosing it collectively, or is it?
It's definitely a collective agreement of remaining silent, you know, and not saying like, all right, guys, enough. Let's because it all starts local, right? Like if there's no one standing up to it locally and they're not organized and they're not addressing it, then who's going to stand up to it?
Well,
who's going to sit in the community hall meeting? Who's going to organize and go, hey, hey guys, this isn't cool. We're actually not going to fund you guys for the remainder of this term.
You make a really good
contract with the city at this point in time until we rectify this situation.
There's a guy I've been following on TikTok. It's this I forget his name, but it's a story they're blowing up on TikTok about the city of Babylon. I don't know if you guys have heard. It's in America. It's been in between like two county lines. It's a tiny little town. Some dude used his life savings with his dad to buy a little house and remodel it. And they got screwed by the contractors, and they kept digging on why they got screwed, and they kept digging up more dirt and more dirt and more dirt, and they just started posting all of their stuff on the internet about how corrupt this city and this council and the judge and everybody is in negative things in this town. But going back to your point, the only reason I know about it is because it's in their local community and they're actually doing the speaking out.
That's right.
I'm watching the videos of them trying to hold these people in chairs of power accountable. I'm not going to lie, it's very entertaining, but it is also very serious, Mm-hmm. So yeah, how do you get more people to, at the local level, band together? That's a big tricky question.
The same way we're talking together now, it starts from that. I didn't know you yesterday, and it's always easier to accomplish things together and go out and speak to people,
It has to go grassroots. It has to go from person to person.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
We will not see the change coming from above, because you know what we know this? There was this very interesting research by Canadian Brain Research Institute, and what they found that people who have been into power, like certain positions and cabinets and offices where they're entitled with power, about 3 to 4 years into that seat, they start getting this arrogance syndrome. It's officially called arrogance syndrome. And
I know where you're going.
They were interested why these people getting this disease. What's actually happening on the brain neuron level. So after studying their brains of the people who decided to participate in it, what they noticed is that the whole group of neurons responsible for the empathy simply switches off. In very fast period of time, in 2 years into it, it's a completely different brain picture of the person. And certain amount of brain responsible for empathy it atrophies because it's not being used. And why is that happening? Because people become so concentrated on the maintaining power, on the public image of them. They already think they're better and smarter than everybody else because everybody's acting in a certain way, trying to please them. Oh, that's a powerful person. How do we change the thing? Because it looks like we give permanent brain damage to people by electing them into a seat. You understand?
I know you don't
It's-
mean that
it's
to sound
really-
funny, but that does sound
It
funny
is
to
funny.
me.
It is funny. It is funny. But it's not them. It's not them being evil
No, I
politicians.
get it.
It's us making them
No.
making them ill people
Yeah, no,
By-
I can understand it.
by giving them power.
And this isn't like allegorical literature like Macbeth, just power struggles of killing everyone in the royal family kind of thing. You know, people go crazy for power for some reason, and
Yeah, what's the Star Wars saying, right? Like power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
power
know.
corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's
Yeah,
all.
it's interesting what that study you're talking about the mirror neurons and the specific portion of the cerebral cortex as it relates to empathy, because it directly shows that we're responsible for
well,
our own demise.
if
so
it can go one way, can
we
that
elect
be
them.
reversed? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
by checks and balances, by really the same way you deal with real criminals, right? Like if someone burglarizes your house, you expect them to be held accountable, right?
Oh yeah, you're saying just replace the people with brain damage. I was saying, can you reverse the brain damage? Yeah.
Well, I'm sure once it can be rehabilitated. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're still learning about the cerebral cortex, but it'll never happen if we keep electing people on their fallacious promises, right?
If we
It's
simply
this-
replace
this
them with different.
chronic forgetfulness, you know? Yeah.
But then another interesting topic, like instead of just replacing them with new people to get brain damage, we can actually build a system in which we don't empower anyone with power over us. Because what is power actually is? What is power, in your opinion?
Social trust. It is if power is basically a group of someone else, I would say trusting someone else's command or saying enough to do what they want to do.
I have a
I think it was
slightly
trust-based.
different definition. Power is ability to force your will upon another person, sometimes against their will.
Well, we're talking about two different powers. You're talking about a push. I'm talking about a pull. I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
but no. Actually, Tali is explaining the effect of you granting that person your power, right? And the effect of that.
So you
So-
said we
so
trust them.
it's a
We
direct
trust
conversion,
them.
you know?
But what's
Okay.
happening after? And that's how, because we allow this, we willingly give. What is our election? It's the act of us not executing our power, but simply delegating it to someone. And it made sense in maybe ancient Greek times where people had to gather somewhere. You had this huge society of people. Somebody has to work in their field whole day to grow crops and get food on the table, whatever. Somebody's hunting in the forest. They cannot go every day to the central square and vote in the town hall. They say, okay, out of our community we have 20 people here, we're gonna elect one representative who's gonna represent our rights. We're gonna entitle him with this power to make decisions for us at that place where they physically people have to go
Okay.
there and
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
present there. Makes sense, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And he's accountable in front of these
Yes.
people. He has to be accountable, and actually once in a while they have to check up on him what's going on there, how the things going, and so on. And through decades and hundreds of years, we've been seeing similar process in one form or another. Sometimes it went into like allowing people to elect more. Sometimes we've seen totalitarian regimes occur. But the thing is that right now this whole system doesn't make sense, because with technologies, with ability to make decisions on your cell phone, vote, put likes on the videos and stuff, it can be totally applied to the concept of power. Instead of delegating it to someone, you can execute it live. You can make decisions that gonna affect your life by yourself. And if everyone is doing the same, you don't have to delegate it to anyone. That way, your amount of power, it's yours. It's always been yours. You don't give it to anyone. You keep it to yourself and you execute it. So is everyone else in the society. And that way, no one gets brain damage and no one can abuse the power. This is something that has been not possible 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, before the internet really took over. This is something that became possible only with the introduction of global coverage of internet, 4G, 5G, all these networks around the globe. And the thing is, technology is there, but request from the people to use this technology for their benefit is missing. And it seems like people waiting for somebody who already received permanent brain damage to offer them the solution. And it's silly
Well,
because
we've been
they
born
will
into
not-
the society of hierarchy and power transfer, so we're kind of by birth expecting that. So I mean, you have to reprogram that out of somebody to then, because what you're talking about is making it a decision of like legal matters touching someone's actual life, giving them a closer vote to that. The problem right now is people are voting with their actions, and there's too much delay latency between the action they choose and then whether or not that's an ROI
It's
of benefit
implementation.
or
Yeah.
suffering because you
That's
chose the
right.
wrong action. So
Right.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, technology and the internet, maybe blockchain technology could just close that
Absolutely.
latency gap.
Absolutely.
But the other half of the coin is, do most people have their best interest in mind? If most people are making terrible decisions for themselves, do you want that part of way of that they're living to then influence your life? I don't know how exactly I'm trying to ask that. Like, let's say I'm a smoker. I smoke cigarettes, and I want them available and just anywhere I can get them. So, and all the smokers feel like that, and maybe you've got a majority of people in the country who are smoking cigarettes, and then so now they're voting on that. But I mean, you are already having that vote happen because people are purchasing the cigarettes. So I mean,
well,
I think this interesting hypothetical is, interesting, because if technology was actually released to the public, that wouldn't be a problem, And if it was a problem, then we would collectively use our resources to develop a solution. Whereas today it's backwards, right? Like our entire economic system is set up in a way that, regardless of the choices that are made or the policies, right? We produce, the labor market produces a thing, but that wealth is then not distributed. It's actually destroyed. It's destroyed in multiple conflicts and wars, if we speak about our country and Western civilization in general.
yeah, and if only people knew about all the damage they doing to themselves by smoking.
I hope that
And
was clear, by the way, though, that correlation there, right?
you took it.
we would
You said
make it happen.
I feel like what you said about destroying the results of our labor is something that, made... I was watching Jacques Fresco with the Venus Project, and he had very interesting ideas. I feel like one of the things he said, this is a famous quote by him, that if only we used all the amount of money that were destroyed during the Second World War, we could, for like creative solutions, we could, with the very same amount of money, provide a free house for every single person on this planet. And he was like, imagine how much it would change your life if you had a house built for which you don't have to pay anything. It's already in your possession and you are a free person. How much freedom it brings into your life. Instead of that, we destroyed this wealth, something that Jason talked about. And that generated a lot of profit for people who were involved in this thing, which puts us to the very same topic with cigarettes that you mentioned before. If we live in a society in which, by the rules, profit is above everything else, including human life. So people being misled by forged scientific evidences, by those posters, the very famous ones. I go to the Cafe 50s in West LA, close to Santa Monica, and one of the posters over there, they have like 50s posters. It says, "My doctor smokes camels."
yeah.
Like, can you imagine like how much misled we were at that time, and people would actually believe that smoking is good, that this brand of cigarettes is healthier, and so on. So when this part of promotion, bad things for profit, is being eliminated, and people know truthful information about how alcohol actually affects your body, how much damage it's done, it's going to be hard for to force anyone to take alcohol, even for medical purposes, after people find out truth about how alcohol affects your body. Right now, that would be impossible because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So much money is.
But people
into-
are aware of the negative impacts. I would think most people are. And if they don't know the actual science of it, they can probably see the damage in their life close by. But again, I think there's a spiritual element. We haven't talked anything about spirituality or metaphysics, but I mean, if you're going to talk about alcohol, my understanding, the etymology is al-ghul, which is Arabic for like a ghost or a spirit, which is why we also call liquors spirits.
Wow.
So
demonic possession.
and this is all why we get the blackout phenomenon, where your body is still moving around and doing stuff, but your consciousness is not there. And it's very unsettling the next day when people are telling you, yeah, we were doing this and you were doing that. And you're like, I don't remember any of that. And you start to feel shame, embarrassed, guilt. All those negative things that a negative entity would feed on, right? So they're causing you to do the actions to get that negative energy and extract it. That would be my spiritual analysis of alcohol. So I mean, even if people are aware of it, it's sharing energy. It's an energy transfer is what I think it is. It's a personal choice at that point too, right? We all had to choose as individuals to just not put the bottle to the face.
Yeah, but once that choice has been made, like inviting evil things to your life, either ghosts, spirits, or alcohol, is much easier, if especially than getting rid out of it, than getting out of that trap later. Because once people made this choice, and many times people making this choice unwillingly, only because kids in my school do the same, I'm gonna do the same. And from my classmates, not everyone is alive now, and because of substances.
Same.
That's why. And those were very good kids. Like, I knew them,
Yeah.
and right now I understand how much of a good kids they were. But they were from families where, parents were not there or something was off. And that led to terrible consequences. And there was no one out there to help, because nobody cares. Honestly, we live in such a world where who cares about kids? I'm thinking from different perspective. I'm thinking from perspective that there are no other people's kids. We have society as a general unified society, and all children in this world are our children. We have no right to let any child be left alone with their problems. Or how can a mother be left alone with the problems of their children? How can there be anyone not providing health care? It doesn't matter how much expensive it is. I'm seeing these commercials online that send me $20 or whatever to save my child from certain things. I have no words to express how incorrect is it. And when we saying that there has to be free healthcare for everyone and it has to be paid by the society, we mean it. But people who deny it, who say no, they deny it up until the point where they face it, when they become the one who have to beg for money online to save their child. So it's not embarrassing to beg for money to save your child, but it's embarrassing to say that you demand human rights for yourself, for your children, for everybody else. And this is what we've been facing with Jason by participating in Creative Society, that something that all people want and all people would like to, they don't demand it only because they think that others will not support it. And when you speak privately to anyone, they say, I would love to live in this society, but it's other people would not support it.
It's conditioned learned helplessness, and that goes back to your question, not only about the smoking thing, but about people's choices. If the society changes, then the upbringing, the external starts to allow the person to reflect on the internal as well. And the root cause of these things is escapism, right? Convenience. or an addiction to escape from the reality because people don't believe in their own power. And so by having these conversations like Tali had just discussed, is people speak about these things in private, but the only reason why they don't speak openly is because they think someone else is going to judge them or someone else is going to disagree with them. And it turns out that everyone wants to live in a world that they're provided for, but they forget that they're the one that makes up the world, And I really find this in conversations when you ask people, well, can things change? It's like, no, well, it's that person, that corporation, that thing. And it's like, well, who makes up that corporation, that state, that thing, that body? Well, those people. And who are those people? Oh, well, they're my neighbors. And it's like, aren't you a part of society?
Hmm.
So
Right. Yes.
it's a very funny thing.
Yes.
It's not just a funny thing. I feel like it's also interesting that, it's hard to be a brave person when you're in the room with cowards and everyone is silent. There was this experiment with monkeys when they put a monkey into...
we're going to talk about I was just thinking about the same
about
thing.
cold showers and everything.
The whole 10 minutes conversation I've been thinking about this study. So go ahead and tell people about it, man. What happened to the monkeys?
Well, they were either put in cold water or electroshock in them whenever a monkey was reaching for a banana. And at some point they had a whole room of monkeys and they were all knew that if one is going to reach for banana, everyone is going to get either cold shower or electric shock. And then when another monkey was walking into the room, seeing that banana, trying to reach for them, other monkeys would attack that monkey. To the point where they all wouldn't even
it's
make
the collective herd mentality, and they got to the point where they replaced every single monkey that actually saw the banana got taken to cause a shower with monkeys that didn't see that, but the monkeys that never actually saw that would still harass and shame that other monkey and physically get it off, because that's just what the other monkeys taught it to do. Yeah. And that is the generational trauma that's not 100% a person's choice. It's just the only choice that they've been given. They don't know another choice. So if you only have between A and B, you're going to think you only have between A and B, and they're just not given those other options. And I think that the internet and our ability to connect and talk like we are, this new phenomenon in the last 20 years, I think it's coming down to us. On our generation, I think it's possible to break the generational trauma. If you can rehabilitate trauma in an individual, you can rehabilitate trauma in a group, right? That would be my guess. So, yeah.
Well said, gentlemen. Well said.
Very well said. So, as you said, it's a trauma, and it's very hard to be a brave person in a room full of cowards, but it's also very hard to be a coward in the room of brave people. It works.
That's a good point, because I didn't think about the other side.
So
there.
When you see example of group of people actually getting together, and very simple people, all of us, we have daytime jobs, we work in, we have families and so on. None of us is politician either. None of us is looking for any political careers, offices. None of us is being funded by some grants from any organizations and so on. But
besides Robbie Wells, who decided to take responsibility on himself.
Well, right? Many politicians will. So our idea of implementing the creative society, of building the society in which we all would like to live, in which people are provided and where human freedoms are staying at the highest point in the value hierarchy. What we've noticed that people resonate when they see people actually voicing facts that everybody knows are true, because everybody understands that carbon footprint or whatever is just a power trip over people. But by themselves, all the scientists have been shut down. All the, to the point where it became a religious belief. And it's funny because some of the scientists were smeared as heretics. Heretics.
Heretics.
There was an article in Nature magazine where they say Judith Corey, and she's a very well established, one of the most respected climatologists in the United States, and they smeared her as a heretic who turned her back on her colleagues with not supporting them in the ClimateGate email controversy because she knew it's fake and she has nothing to do to that dirty business. So right now, when we started voicing these things out loud, presenting facts, we're showing the very same thing, what's happening to our planet. We also showing the progression of the climate change, that we started having much more earthquakes, much more extreme climatic events, much more hurricanes. The financial damage from those things already exceeds any record-breaking numbers of previous years. And we also noticing how on the news they trying to downplay it by saying, well, something similar happened 50 years ago or 100 years ago or whatever. But thing they don't mention that it used to be very occasional back then, but it's happening at much higher pace right now. Almost every year, almost every month, we see another record-breaking climatic event. One of the most notorious ones was this explosion of Honga Tonga volcano. It happened in January last year. And why it was so important? It was underwater submarine volcano. It was about 150 meters below the ocean level. But the steam went 57 kilometers up, something that never happened before. It just shows how much pressure is building up inside of our planet right now. We can see the very same thing with earthquakes. And what we noticed, what our seismology team noticed, they saw that up until 2014, there are 4 major databases of earthquakes around the world. They were all showing the very same data. This number of this magnitude earthquakes, this number of this number of that. After 2014, they started showing different sets of data. And some of them started erasing, like USGS, United States Geographical Service, started erasing the earthquakes with magnitude below 4. And we were shocked to find that out because we were like, okay, if you look at those graphs, you're going to see, kind of seismic activity is not changing that much because they all register in different data. If you summarize unique earthquakes from all databases, the freaking thing goes skyrocketing. And when we ask scientists who actually use in databases, they were like, we don't actually know difference because each seismologist only choose one database and we only work with one, so we don't work with other ones. And when we asked this question, why your database erasing below 4, the question was ridiculous. They said, well, that's a large amount of data, which, you have to store somewhere, and it doesn't make that much sense. It's a cost. I was like,
you got to follow the money.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
It's an Excel table. How much space Excel table takes when it's a text file.
Yeah.
You have video streaming services with billions of terabytes of data uploaded every day, but you don't have space to hosting to keep your data. This was a ridiculous excuse. And what we actually seen, the volcano eruption in La Palma in Spain showed it very brightly, that scientists knew that eruption is going to occur 3.5 months before the eruption, but they did not notify anyone. This information was not presented to the people because they said that privately, when we were interviewing politicians involved into this thing, and off camera they said that coffins are cheaper than evacuating people, and then finding out what if it's not going to happen, we're just going to evacuate people and nothing happens. And this is why everybody knows that huge earthquakes, that this planet has never seen anything like what happened in Thailand in 2004. December 26th, 300,000 people were victims, lost their lives to the huge tsunami that occurred in Thailand. Only, what was it? 7 years after, in 2011, March 11, 2011, a Fukushima earthquake was huge, second unprecedented. And what they say, there is this point of view that earthquakes cannot be predicted. So some people use it, some very literate people say so. What actually happens when two tectonic plates really collide against each other, they create this pressure which is being registered by seismo sensors they have placed, especially in Japan. They're very good with it. So there's this seismologist Lyubushin from Russia who was very good at doing this kind of research, and Japanese let him use their database and granted him access. And we interviewed him, and he said 3 years in advance, before, in 2008, he published multiple articles, and he was left off by because he was predicting that earthquake magnitude 9 is going to happen in this region within years. And they were laughing at him.
So there's a correlation between the plates making love and then like a baby vibration coming out.
Yeah, what he said, they making sounds, and he says this ground noise, it's very kind of like, it's it doesn't
like making love.
Kind of. But also very interesting thing, because, okay, look, why is it hard to predict earthquakes? Because you have two tectonic plates making love, as you say, against one another. They actually pressing against each other very hard, and that creates certain amount of ground noise and tension and so on. And sometimes it snaps against each other just like that. And that creates a huge wave across the tectonic plates. And that's when tsunami occurs, huge...
Do you think it could be sonic? Do you think it could be audio, like sound waves that are causing it?
Well, some kind of ground noise. I don't think it's actually acoustic, but the interview is on our website. If anyone is interested, Professor Lyubushin, please check it out.
Yeah.
And what he said, what's the biggest problem? Because they register this ground noise. They know that there is big tension, but sometimes tension is being released gradually. They just softly glide against each other and release without earthquake. So the prediction, you cannot say 100% this is going to happen because there is tension, because sometimes they release gradually, but sometimes it snaps. What was more interesting, that by his prediction, he knew that big earthquake is coming in 2011 and it's going to be magnitude 9 or more, and no one else was even saying that because it was unseen, it was unprecedented, nothing like that happened. But he registered that the previous one from 2004 was only a pre-shock to this one. So, as he said, usually after earthquake, ground noise releases. It flattens out and kind of disappears.
Yeah, I could see where there's problems. Yeah.
The most interesting part, after 2011, it did not disappear. It kept building up.
Well, here's a problem I'm seeing from a real estate perspective. If you know a bunch of geographic places are shot pretty accurately by a certain amount of years, if everyone else knew that, the property value would go down. So don't tell anybody, and that value on the coastline stays up.
Actually, Japanese know that there will be a huge earthquake, much bigger than 2011 in Japan. There are multiple articles about it online. But the thing is, nobody's doing anything about it, because what you have to evacuate, and we know that 90% of Japan will be severely...
Who's going to help then?
Who's going to help? Normally, we would already have to be building shelter cities on the mainland and moving those people out of these areas, because it makes no sense to stay there.
Because it takes time.
Yeah, okay.
This is projected to happen by 2032 with 99.9%.
Well, what about American FEMA camps? Federal Emergency Mandate Act camps, or whatever the heck.
That's a kind of a
right
polarizing topic.
But those are the idea of that is that those are inland places for people to safely go and place in, right?
Of course, but I would retire to the comment made earlier regarding coffins are cheaper. That's the motivation. It's actually a really interesting topic, because like when you think about it, about organizing our society and these events that are happening, regardless of what we attribute them to and what we're finding, it still begs the question, like, well, why aren't we putting our resources in our ability to safeguard and protect human life? Like, just a simple question to each other.
Maybe it's because humans don't value human life enough. Maybe on a collective level.
Well, it's interesting because everyone knows the value of their own life and doing everything possible for themselves. But it's like in that parabola when you have people sitting around the table and everyone's spoon is too long to feed themselves. So if they're not gonna start feeding each other, they're gonna starve to death.
Okay.
And this is in our society. We're at this place where we've been
Okay.
taught to only care about yourselves. But the thing is, when
in the Western world, right?
it's been actually adopted by everywhere right now. The collectiveness is, and people feel that there is power in unity. And I'm not talking about any
Absolutely.
communistic or socialistic idea, because that thing didn't work. I think the best lesson we've learned from communism is that we should never
doesn't
empower.
work.
It doesn't work. Yeah, it simply doesn't work.
Yeah, people, and I actually got a reaction video right now that's pretty on topic. Cameron, if you want to head to the page, it says old war vet talks about trumpet or something. What is it? Yeah, musical instruments are more powerful than guns. With guns, you push crowds. With instruments, you pull crowds.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my note. That was my title. So we can go to that video, and this is a very interesting perspective of the individual in a war and what actually happens. And I believe this story to be true.
This is 2 weeks after D-Day. It's dark, raining, muddy, and I'm stressed. So I get my trumpet out, and the commander says, "Jack, don't play tonight because there's one sniper left." I thought to myself, that German sniper is as scared and lonely as I am. So I thought, I'll play his love song. The next morning, here came a jeep up from the beach about 1.5 miles away. And the military police says, "Hey, Captain, there's some German prisoners getting ready to go to England." One of them keeps saying in broken English, "Who played that trumpet last night?" And he burst into sobs. He said, "When I heard that number that you played, I thought about my fiancée in Germany. I thought about my mother and dad, and about my brothers and sisters, and I couldn't fire." And he stuck out his hand, and I shook the hand of the enemy. He was no enemy. He was scared and lonely like me. The power of music. This is 2 weeks after
So
D-Day.
that's, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the message of that, I think, is extremely powerful to the human, the nature of what an individual human is and what they really are about. And that war is not what humans are about on an individual level at all. And that even if you can let the soldiers and enemies connect on a different level, that you can actually disarm violence with sound waves, psychologically speaking. That's a pretty powerful phenomenon. And if that kind of, and we see this especially in big festivals and concerts, Woodstock, and you get musicians who then can get people on the same kind of vibrational wavelength of moving together, and then they can push messages that maybe a crowd might more willingly will receive collectively. And I mean, this is it's dangerous for people in power who like to use guns, right? They don't like people to know their power. Yeah.
I want to thank you for playing this video. It almost
Sure.
brought tears into my eyes. And this is what shows us that people are not enemies to each other, even on the different sides of battlefield. And sitting there, they realize that they fighting for what? For somebody's greed and somebody's who's wanting to grab another person's piece of land or whatever. We have this clip from our forum. It's a A Spoken Word by Roy Star Soundsake. Maybe we could play that because I think you would feel you would feel the message behind that one as well.
Yeah. How
And,
can we find that?
It's
Are we able to watch that now?
yeah. I think it's a Spoken Word by Roy Star. Spoken Word.
We can go to any of those tabs, Cameron. It's fine.
Yeah, it's called Spoken Word. Timeless Spoken Word by Roy Star Soundsake. And while we're looking for that, there was another fact I recall. Yeah, there was another fact I remember. I'm gonna shoot a text to Cameron right now. Can you imagine? About 80% of soldiers would refuse to shoot into the enemy. They would shoot above their
Yeah.
heads.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that? You know that people
That's a
would-
phenomenon, yeah.
Nobody wanted to kill another person because they know the consequences.
Mhm.
If you speak to people who actually killed anyone, they know that the ghost of those people can hunt them down till the end of their life.
They're
And-
concerned about a spiritual after effect.
I believe
I-
that people feel that they doing something wrong, which is against human nature, and they subconsciously, even without knowing that fact, they realized how much wrong it is to take another person's life.
That's absolutely true.
Timeless Spoken Word by Roy Starr. I'm having a hard time actually understanding what he's saying. Like I can hear the words. I'm not processing what he's saying for some reason. My brain is not getting the like I can't, like it's really weird. I can't explain what I'm.
That's interesting.
No, it's English, I know, but I mean like it. I don't know. My brain's listening too much to other stuff in the video.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. Well, this was actually a different clip. This was the opener to our conference. I was talking about the other one. I just sent the TikTok video to Cameron. So in the text message, maybe we'll play this later. But that's an interesting thing you say, that art, music is a very strong force, and we believe.
Why do
yeah.
we need such a world where life is not valued? A world where we'll be finished by the climate or by our own sense of pride misalignment. After all, better is the world where life is valued, where life is favorable for all, and where the goal is the same. The clear format of creative society is to the benefit of all, undeniably. For this motto is a sunrise of humanity. That's when the human in us will flourish. We will discover ourselves, and our talents to create will be encouraged. The key to change our life are in the 8 foundations, which are to be embedded into the constitutions of nations, so that there's welfare, vastness of creation. The whole world must be turned into a beautiful garden for us to live in an abundant oasis. It's easy to change the format of our world. We just need to start spreading the word. And that's why we have to proclaim with high speed that the creative society is what we all need. That's why I tell you, do speak, because the word that arises from within will have the oppression of silent skin. Today, our survival is only in unity. It's the only way and solution for humanity. So I ask you now, tell everyone you meet, for humanity's evolution, the creative society is what we need. The creative society, we need to make it a reality. Why do we need
Righteous.
Yeah, so actually by making such calls for action to actually speak about society you actually want to live, because something that we talked about before, when you say you live in this brain fog of alcohol, you don't really set goals and you don't really trying to achieve anything, because you're kind of in this bubble of illusion that everything's fine when you had another shot. I believe as a society we've been brought to the point where we all lived for too long without any goals. Like, and the goals that have been offered to us before, freedom of democracy, communist idea, or anything else, people saw that it's all been fake. So what you said, there is no challenge, and what can bring up the society into actually start taking action and be proactive. And there is such thing as point of bifurcation. That's when the system goes to the highest point of its development, and it either evolves into something different or it falls apart.
Okay.
And I believe right now, and it's just not just a belief, it's based on this research we've been doing with all the creative society volunteers and participants, that right now we're at the point where humanity is going to have to make a decision, because what's happening to the climate right now is alarming, but it's not affecting everyone yet. The facts are being hidden from the public right now by erasing data from databases, by downplaying it on the news, and by distracting human attention by political drama and celebrity news and fueling hatred among people, trying them to force this belief that you have enemies in one state or another, that your enemies live by the oceans or in flyover state, that the color of the state determines whether it's friendly or, and even human relationships falling apart because of this hatred. This is absolutely unacceptable and unbelievable that we allow people to indoctrinate us with this hatred, because if enemies on the battlefield were able to shake hand, how absurd is it that we are being led by those who divide us, when the most important thing right now than ever before in the history is to unite and make a request to change the society. And we're not talking about revolutions or anything illegal. What we're talking about, it all has to be done gradually and within the legal framework of each country. In each country, people have to create a request for self-governing society and put human life first, and only accept those decisions which improve human life.
I wonder
And
if
which
AI could make like a malleable model to help local communities start to drum up that activity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is very much needed. The thing is, what Elon Musk brought up at Joe Rogan's podcast a few years ago, he said, I've working in the Silicon Valley, and he's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, the developer of ChatGPT, in 2015, and then he invested a lot of money into this project as well. He said, and also Tesla. People think it's a like car company. It's an AI company. They have video cameras in each Tesla car, and they build in this system, which is incredible. But what he said, and what people did not hear, he said, working years in the Silicon Valley, I've been exposed to the most cutting-edge AI technologies. And I've been trying to warn people that very soon automation will take over, do most of the labor, and take over most of the industries. And there will be very little to no jobs for people. And we have to be proactive here, because it's going to be too late. Because if this technology will be in the hands of one person, it will be a global dictatorship without us even knowing that it happened. We're only going to find out post factum, because, just as Google, they didn't say, oh, guys, now that you have cell phones and we have our software in them, we're going to listen to everything you say. Because there was no law that would say, oh, you have to allow people to manually switch off microphones or whatever. The same thing with AI. The technology is already there, but because we did not see the negative consequences of implementing it, we are not being proactive at demanding the legal framework which will guarantee that this technology will be used for the benefit of society. And benefits are incredible. This can do all hard labor for us, and we only will get benefits of that hard labor. So from physical perspective, it will be an absolute deal breaker. It's going to change our society in a huge way. Like people, all physical problems with our bodies, with jobs, with material things will be solved. And people going to be up to new challenges, how to bring life to different galaxies, how to actually build sustainable systems here on Earth, how to build vertical farms where we can grow the best kind of food, how to solve the energy. And the energy issue is also very important because technology of free energy and even solar generators have been existent for at least 100 years since Nikola Tesla he created. His dream was to give this power to the people.
There's a guy called Dr. Parkenstein who's recreated some of his technology on TikTok who's been taken down. He's created like Tesla coils that people can tune into the radio frequency and just get energy out of the air. He's heavily censored and taken down.
I would love to see those if there are any left before they take them.
Yeah. What they did, that their second reboot of their TikTok channel is what looked like is they're trying to disguise their information as, and I don't know, this is just my take on it. I'm not trying to sell them out. This could be completely wrong, but they have now created a business that is kind of like, almost like a theme house of science kind of thing. If you've ever been through like any of those like houses of anomalies or where you see like all kinds of Ripley's stuff, like they're kind of like making it look like that now, but he's playing with real science. Let me send you his little TikTok here because he was huge, but they keep taking him down, which means he's probably doing something right.
Many people even disappeared. There was one American scientist who invented the car that was driving on water, and then he mysteriously passed away. There was this Japanese company that...
1 gallon of water all the way across the United States.
1 gallon of water, wow. Mm-hmm. And there was Japanese company which they introduced this car that ran on water in 2008, and the next year the company disappeared and the website was shut down.
And just recently there's a guy who created a way to capture electricity from radio waves. Mm-hmm. And he was turning on TVs with radio waves, like just using electricity, and I think he's no longer with us.
Wow.
It's really interesting, this conversation, because we had showed at the forum about free energy. And, at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about energy bills and things like that. But it turns out a few of these companies have been using free energy devices and charging people for it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
So the energy from the free energy devices is being sold, especially for American military bases in remote areas, but it's illegal to sell the devices themselves. And we know why, not because there are evil people who control everything, because implementation of this device will destroy the whole industry of generation of energy. And imagine how many people are involved. It's millions of people who dig in oil, who transport in oil, who work at gas stations across the United States. And even, it comes to the cleaner in that gas store somewhere in Amarillo that's gonna stay without job all across the world. So this technology, amazing technology, which in creative society would be beneficial, you just put this device in your car or in your home and you never have to worry about energy again. In current consumer society will simply destroy our economies and gonna lead to collapse, which is it's a global systemic crisis. This is the very bifurcation point where, again, we have so many medical devices and technologies which could eliminate such very big disease, which we're talking about right now on a global level. They simply not being implemented because, again, that would leave so many people without jobs. And AI actually solving this, because introduction of AI, even the medical AI, Dr. AI, you're going to have this device, you're going to put your glasses on during your panic attack or anxiety, and this AI doctor, which know all the libraries, all the medical fields, studied all the medical cases, who is personalized to you because they know your specific case and everything, to the amount of sleep, amount of food, what kind of food you ate today, how many steps you did. They're going to be so preventative with the healthcare that it's going to be impossible to get sick in a very close future. But the thing is, again, how do you solve the problem of many people staying unemployed? Because nobody is going to choose a human doctor over AI doctor, because AI doctor is 24/7 right there, ready to serve you, and even gives you advices on how to schedule your day, what to change in your maybe diet or whatever. This is very important, and also they can check your heart rate, whatever. You can have smartwatch, whatever. But right now, it's not connected to the global system. But once this ChatGPT analyzes everything, we believe that this might be the very same general AI which we predicted in 2021 conference. We had global crisis. This already affects everyone. First hour, we laid out every industry, how exactly it's going to be affected and how exactly AI is going to replace people with specific facts. We showed from entertainment. Like, when Tupac had performance in Coachella, not real Tupac.
The hologram, yeah.
Hologram. The sales of his albums went up many times more.
Yeah.
And we know that around the world, these hologram performances are getting much more and more popular. And once the technology is right there, it's going to be almost impossible to distinguish where is the real person. Even nobody's going to listen to real people because they can, do whatever stuff. They can get drunk, not take the right note, whatever. AI performs perfect.
I just think humans, I think what you're saying is right, that it's going to become this tidal wave-ness of it's just going to be everywhere, this taking everyone's jobs and everything. But I do think that humans are therefore going to place a higher value on real human productions in the artistic or entertainment sense. I mean, you can't outbuild something that builds better. But when it comes to a subjective opinion, better art, maybe it may be technically better, but people are not. I really think there's going to be a large group of people that will just simply want human art. As soon as they find out it was made by AI, they're going to go, no.
Yeah,
a lot of people are going to like it.
But the same way as we discussed with you about AI influencers, today many people actually invest in their time and attention not into promoting themselves or an image of some young model, whatever, but they take AI-generated image of a person and promote it because they know this person will never get old. They will never get into politically incorrect statements. They will never get into any scandals. They will be the perfect image, and investment there will be forever yours. The same thing will happen in music industry when the musical producers will be given a choice. You can invest your time and attention into promoting a new pop star and you will get so much headache. You're gonna have these drama queens constantly demanding attention, thinking they're irreplaceable and so on. Or you can buy this flash drive with this AI singer, kind of like Tupac hologram, but it's gonna be a completely new character. And you can AI will analyze all the rap songs, all the hits.
They
all
just
the
tried
tunes.
this. What the heck was the AI rapper they just did this with? That the community, there's a lot of communities got mad and called it cultural appropriation because the AI rapper took a what the heck was its name? Cameron, do you remember who I'm talking about? It was a little AI rap. We can look it up. It was a record label used AI and then used computer generated animations, and this AI was writing pretty racist lyrics and using the N-word quite a bit because it's there we go, FN Mecca. People hated it. They fucking hated this guy.
This looks like a mockery. This looks...
no, it was a genuine attempt. What was the record label? It was a big label. First AI rapper to be signed to a major record label. And basically, there's music videos.
This looks like an attempt of making an electric vehicle before Elon Musk. Have you seen how ugly they are?
Yeah.
They were disgusting, like through whole 90s and 80s.
What you're saying about the way he looks is basically what people were saying about the actual lyricism in music. This is disgusting. Why would you try and sell this? This is not an actual person of color. And then to let the AI use these words and these phrases is just... it's just not good.
But then there will be someone who will turn this ugly, unattractive General Motors kind of electric vehicle from the 90s into a beautiful, nice, sexy Tesla, and people gonna buy it.
Fuck, you're right.
We've been there before.
Yeah.
We've seen it all. People gonna buy it once it's done the right way.
Should we take another break, guys?
Yeah, I feel so.
And then maybe wrap up on another chunk?
Yeah.
I still feel like we got some more to talk about.
Sounds good.
Sound good, Jason? He's hanging out. He's one of the most chill guys I've ever met. Cool.
Yeah.
They-
What- Whatever's clever.